Hello and welcome to the third and the Don Football Show. I am Joe. With me is Cecil as always. We are here to recap Week 17, talk about Week 18. We have some pretty wild playoff scenarios to go over. A lot of people are benching their players for Week 18, probably in a way we haven't seen in a couple of years. So a lot going on this week. Cease, how you doing?
I'm good. Hopefully everyone had a happy new year and yeah, a lot of scenarios to talk about.
Absolutely. Let's start with a recap of last week, and that will lead into, I'm sure, naturally talking about some of the playoff scenarios. And then we'll make our picks and kind of talk about how we think the playoff scenarios will go. So let's start with our recap of last Thursday night, December 28th. We had the Browns killing the Jets 37-20. Joe Flacco throws 3 touchdown passes and plays pretty well in this game against his former team. We had mentioned it was Joe Flacco revenge game. He got his revenge against the Jets, who never really gave him the chance to be a full-time starter, and now he is that for the Browns. The Browns get the win. The Jets, obviously, the season wasn't the same after Aaron Rodgers went down. A couple seconds into the season, they just, everything kind of crashed down. They went 6-10, never got a quarterback that really did anything there. And for the Browns, they're in a position where Joe Flacco has them feeling pretty good, and they're going to end up benching him for the Week 18 matchup against the Browns, and they're going to start former Cincinnati quarterback Jeff Driscoll. So funny how things can change, and honestly, this Browns defense I think has put him in this position more than anything.
Right. I think it's a good story with Joe Flacco, and he's been able to put all these numbers on the board. But he also has thrown some interceptions too. I mean, that's a key part of Joe Flacco's game. One that was a big question mark and a big knock on him when he was a starter with Baltimore for all those years. He limited interceptions in the playoffs every year, so that's the reason why they were able to go so far. Um, I mean, I don't know what this postseason is going to bring for the Browns. Obviously, only time will tell. I think there's going to be a little bit. It's not going to be as easy as it's been for Joe Flacco. I think it's going to be teams that are in it to win it. Obviously, the Jets have a really good defense, but the reality is they're not playing for anything. It's a short week. At a certain point, it's hard to tell a team, oh, these guys are great, and that are they even motivated at this point? I mean, probably the Jets would have packed it in as soon as they were eliminated, which it seems like they have done. So, I mean, it's a win. Cleveland Browns defense is going to be, the X factor for the playoffs and how far they go. Joe Flacco throwing the ball for 300 yards is all great and all, but a lot of times, that it leads to more bad than good when those turnovers seem to happen. And we'll see. It's just too big a question mark for me. I know some people are very high on the Browns, but we've seen Joe Flacco for 3-4 weeks. That's not really a full season, and we've seen a lot of people have a really good, couple weeks of football and then fall back to earth.
Yeah, and for as much as we talk about the Cowboys being a team that only wins games at home, Browns are 8-1 at home this year. A little bit easier, a little bit better of a record than when they're on the road. So they're a wild card team. Not the Ravens locked up number one seed. It's going to be a tougher route in the playoffs than they've had, especially with their fourth place schedule that they had this past year. Let's move on to Saturday, Steve. We had a game with some controversy. The Cowboys win over the Lions 20-19. Now, this controversy also has playoff implications. The Cowboys now, with their win and then the Eagles' loss, which we'll get to here in a little bit, gives them the NFC East lead. All they have to do is beat the Giants this Sunday, or excuse me, beat the Commanders this Sunday, and they have the number 2 seed and they win the NFC East. So there's a lot of play here. It comes down to the Lions had a 2-point play that Taylor Decker was reporting as eligible, but Dan Skipper was going to pretend to be the guy who reported as eligible. It confused the refs, even though Dan Campbell had said so before. Now, the refs should have figured this out, especially because they had everything explained beforehand. And Taylor Decker did go report to him, but they got confused, and that's just a long list of gripes we have with the officials this year. The Cowboys guarded the play pretty well because they thought Taylor Decker was not eligible because every ref has to announce to the crowd which players are eligible. So they guarded the 5 guys that were eligible, and the Lions score a 2-point conversion at the end of the game to presumably take the lead and win the game. They don't get it, and then Dan Campbell decides to just keep on going for 2-point conversions despite any penalties, any situation whatsoever. It kind of makes things a little bit harder on him. I know I like the aggressiveness at its start, but at a certain point you have to be like, let's just tie this up and go to overtime. See, it didn't make any sense. It felt like Dan Campbell was getting too cute with things. I know that's something you had mentioned to me when we talked about this game. And so while the Lions maybe should have won this game or at least had the better opportunity to do so, they could have handled things a little better themselves as well.
Right. I mean, I appreciate Dan Campbell's aggressiveness in this game. I appreciate the fake punt play when they're, on their own 35. I like that stuff. I like that about Dan Campbell. I like how aggressive the Lions have been all season. It's paid off a lot of times. I like going for two, on the road against the Cowboys in Jerry World. I think that's the right call. I would have done the same thing at that point. However, it's kind of weird because we have noticed that every time the ref announces so and so is eligible, that didn't happen on this play. That was the weird thing because I mean we've watched a lot of football games. We watch them, live on broadcast, and every time you hear it like clockwork because the ref has to tell everyone. And I mean, it's like you said, and like we talked about before. I think the Lions got a little cute on the play. If it would have worked great, they would have looked like geniuses. But the reality is, it was complex, and they probably should have questioned some things as soon as the refs kind of didn't seem to acknowledge or understand what was going on. Should have called some kind of timeout or tried to figure something out because it was a weird scenario. But after that, the whole, you get a 5 yard penalty, you're now at the 5 or 6 yard line, and now you're going to try to go for two a second time. That was weird, and I was like, this is now become a very low percentage play. Why are we doing this? Then there's another penalty. Micah Parsons is offsides, and then they go a third time, and sure, you're back to where you were, but the reality is, and this is something in the playoffs that coaches will talk about a lot. You only have so many like design, like this is my play, like this is my we need it. I'm pulling it out of the back. No one has seen film on it. We're doing it. And they did that once, and then two more. I mean, they did this two plays, so they burned potentially three gotta have it plays that they could have used for the goal line or for a 2 point conversion or something in the playoffs on this game. Most coaches would, go around and go for two. Like I said, the scenario deems it. A lot of coaches agree with it. A lot of coaches would have just said, it's not our day after the penalty. Let's kick the extra point. Let's stop them and go to overtime. Make it happen. We have a lot of momentum right now. However, Dan Campbell put blinders on and just kept going. So that's my biggest thing is the aggressiveness kind of, bit him in the kneecap this time, so to speak. So you can't get blinders on. As an NFL head coach, you got to put your emotions aside sometimes, and you just got to go, am I doing this because it's a smart thing to do, or am I just doing it because I'm pissed off at what the refs just did? And I think that's what cost them a game is I think, their emotions got the best of them in that situation, and it cost them the game potentially. Would they won OT? We don't know. But the reality was the situation after the first failure would deem, let's tie it up. Let's get our defense back on the field. Let's make a stop. So, I mean, other than that, I mean, they proved they could play with the Cowboys. The Cowboys, again, didn't have the greatest game. Tony Pollard is doing nothing in the run game. I think that's going to be a huge question mark with the Cowboys this, postseason is, are they going to have a running game? Because any team, I mean, the 49ers, great against the run. Eagles aren't bad against the run. I mean, we're talking, and the Lions are pretty good against the run as well. I mean, we're talking a lot of key teams in the playoffs are going to be good run defending defenses. So if they can't get Tony Pollard getting more than 2 yards a carry, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Dak and CeeDee Lamb. And if CeeDee Lamb doesn't continue to just get, almost 200 yards a game, which is crazy and awesome for him, what's that going to leave with the Cowboys offense? I mean, Ferguson's been good. You've got Brandon Cooks there. You've got guys. You got Michael Gallup every once in a while shows up, but you need a balanced attack in the playoffs because teams are too good. And the reality is, relying on one weapon isn't usually get you very far.
I'm with you. I think getting the home field advantage is key for them. Obviously, we know they're a different team at home, so they have home field advantage until the NFC Championship game, unless the 49ers get upset. But this sets up a situation where, yeah, they probably will beat the last wild card team in. They're going to be the 2 seed. They'll beat the last wild card team, whoever that might be. We'll get to talking about that here in a second. But then they have to play the Lions again at home. Could it be different? Do the Lions have different motivations now? Because the Cowboys arguably shouldn't have been in this position to start with because they could have played better down the stretch. Yeah, and that's something they'll have to live with here too. And maybe they can regroup and figure some things out. But Mike McCarthy's end of game management is still an issue. Taking timeouts at the end there when they could have, if the Lions did get that 2 point conversion, they could have had a chance to go win the game with the best kicker in the NFL right now, Brandon Aubrey. So that's something to kind of keep note of in the playoffs as well. So also mentioning CeeDee Lamb sees 13 catches, 227 yards. He becomes the Cowboys' all-time single-season receiving leader, so that's really cool for him. We'll see if he keeps it up. As you said, there's going to be a lot on his shoulders if they cannot figure out how to run the ball. On Sunday, we had the Bills beating the Patriots 27-21. The Bills started off this game hot, but kind of let the Patriots stay in it. This is one where we think the Bills are starting to figure things out, but you just want to see them blow out teams more so in this manner. The Patriots still fighting tough under Bill Belichick. We know they're done for the year. The Bills, if they win, they could be as high as the 2 seed in the AFC. If they lose, they could be as low as the 7th or out of the playoffs. So this week game against Miami means a whole lot to them. And I guess I would have just liked to see, before having more confidence heading into Week 18, I would have liked to see a little bit better performance before heading into that.
Right. I mean, this is a huge game between them and the Dolphins. And we're going to preview it here in a little bit, so not to give too much away. But you're right. I mean, this is a game where Josh Allen didn't really do anything for most of the first half. Sure, he had some rushing yards, but the passing attack was not there. And it was a very midline performance, very just uninspiring. And again, I don't know how many more weeks we can wait for the Bills to just turn it back on. I mean, they did really well against the Dolphins earlier in the season. Maybe this will be the one that jumpstarts them, but you can't have performances like this in the playoffs. And I think that's going to be a big thing. As we look at this last week and we look into Week 18, it's going to be these guys that are playing their starters. It's going to be, we got to use this game to get right. We got to figure stuff out now. If there's something that's been kind of not working very well, we need to either figure out a way to fix it or figure out an alternative way to make up for that. Because if we don't, you're going to come up against, top teams in the NFL. And I mean, you don't want to be on an off week or you go, I don't have a running game and somebody takes, your passing attack away. Or there's no room for error in the playoffs. That's what makes it so great. That's why it's the best in any sport, honestly. But there's a lot of things for them to figure out. They get the win. The Patriots showed more spirit than you'd think. Bailey Zappi doesn't look half bad, but there's still a lot for the Patriots to figure out this offseason. And, the Bills still need to figure out a lot for this postseason if they're going to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how much faith I have in them. This has been a team I've liked in the past, so it is something where I think they can put it all together, but they just haven't, and then they got to figure this out soon. The Bears beat the Falcons 37-13. This is a very big performance for the Bears. They blew out a team for the first time I can remember in recent memory. Defense is playing pretty well. This sets up, I think, some discussion for, hey, let's trade the first pick and keep Justin Fields. I don't know if that was something we really thought a couple weeks ago, but that could be it. It also means that the Falcons, they can win the NFC South if they win their game and Tampa Bay loses. And then for the Bears, they're out of the playoff contention. But I think they already have the number 1 pick with the Panthers pick, and I think they're just happy to see a team who can actually win some games at the end of the year.
No, absolutely. I mean, they look completely in control, and Justin Fields looked in control. I mean, they look really good. Honestly, Young Hoku misses 2 field goals early in the game. There's just a lot. There's a lot of mistakes for the Falcons here. The Falcons have no one to blame about this season but themselves. They have all this offensive talent they refuse to use. They're going to be in a game that, potentially they could be in a place where they could win, and they could win the NFC South if they had won this game with everything that happened in the other games. But the reality is, the Bears stomped them, really. It was really not close. And honestly, the Bears, I'm with you. They have good momentum right now. Sure, Justin Fields is going to have to be paid sooner rather than later than a rookie quarterback would. But I think we just keep taking these rookie quarterbacks, for granted here. Sure, we have the Joe Burrows out there. We have all these guys that did really well and have these success stories. But, you have guys like Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall pick, man. And he's not even really a starter. The only reason he is because the Jets just are dysfunctional at this point. Trevor Lawrence is great, but Trevor Lawrence has not made their team amazing, to be honest. Even Justin Herbert has had really good seasons, but it hasn't amounted to anything around them because the roster and the coaching has been questionable. So it's not all the quarterback. There are very, very few, even guys that are really talented. There are very few guys that are truly in that elite. They will win a game pretty much regardless of everything else on the field. That's not that's not just the number one overall pick. That doesn't grow on trees. And you just assuming from these guys in college who are talented that any of them are that guy, there's just no way to know that until they strap an NFL helmet on. I'm not saying Justin Fields is an elite, amazing quarterback, but I'm saying he's above average. I think the more we've seen in the last couple of games is when you use them right, and things good will happen. I think the defense has performed really well since they got Sweat and traded for him from the Commanders. Um, I mean, think about it. If they trade out of the first overall pick, I mean, even if it's only down a couple spots or they don't get the ransom they got with the Panthers, I mean, it's still, a top tier receiver, maybe another, Joe Old or a top offensive lineman. You need another wide receiver. You need some offensive line help. You can use some other defensive pieces as well. I mean, trade that pick, drop later in the top 5 and then take guys. And I mean, you have your own pick as well. There's no reason to try to start the clock over because the reality is there's pieces to build with now. And you just go and I'm going to blow up the whole thing because I think Caleb Williams in 2-3 years is going to be great. I mean, that's 2-3 years in the NFL, half the team's going to be gone. So, and again, if you just get rid of Justin Fields and you put, Getz and all these other guys and you think it's just Justin Fields' fault, Caleb Williams, Drake May, whoever you're going to take is going to fail just the same way. So I wouldn't do it. I'm all for it too. If you got a guy who can start, that's better than the unknown, and that's better, especially with the value they can get back for that first overall pick and the top blue chip prospects they can build in a roster that can compete right now. Because quarterbacks usually don't compete right away. They have more recently, but the reality is there's a lot of other guys you can draft that can contribute to this team right now in a weak NFC North.
Yeah, we both agree on that. I think you could trade down and even get the second overall pick, get Marvin Harrison Jr., take a tackle, take an edge rusher to go with Montez Sweat with your 10th overall pick, right around there is where it's going to end up being. That's their own, and also add up more picks to go build this roster out because I personally I don't think Caleb Williams is some dynamite prospect that everyone else thinks. I don't think he's as good as Andrew Luck was. I don't think he's good as Trevor Lawrence was coming out of college. I think he's very good. He might be just as good as I thought Justin Fields was. I gave Justin Fields a very good draft grade. But even then, he might even be a little bit better. But even then, do you want to restart the clock? Do you want to restart everything? Have him figure things out? If you're having trouble tailoring an offense to Justin Fields, you might have the same issue. I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago. You might have the same issue doing it with Caleb Williams or Drake May or whoever you might draft. So that's the interesting thing with the Bears too. See, NFC North, the Lions defense has issues. I mean, they're looking really good right now, like they've built something, but they could be beaten next year. The Vikings don't know if Kirk Cousins is their quarterback next year. And when you put that up together along with the fact that the Packers are still in this rebuild mode and figuring out if they have a defensive coordinator, a head coach next year, if Jordan Love is really the guy, he's played very well. But even if he's really the guy, it's just a lot of, you can make a run at it next year for sure. Next game up, we have the Colts beating the Raiders 23-20. This keeps the Colts in contention for the playoffs. The Raiders, with this loss and with some other results going on, are out of the playoffs. Although Antonio Pierce, I think, has made a good case to be the interim head coach. They're going to interview some other guys, including, I think, Harbaugh is rumored for it. Jim Harbaugh, I should say, is rumored for it. The Colts, though, stay in contention for the playoffs. They got Jonathan Taylor going in this game, 96 yards and a touchdown. For them, they're going to have to win or have Pittsburgh lose to make the playoffs, which is very, very possible this week. So, fantastic job by the Colts staying engaged. They weren't expected to do much this year, and then their starting quarterback went down, and they were expected to do less. And Gardner Minshew has steadied the ship, and they need a lot of credit for that, Cease.
No, they absolutely do. Gardner Minshew, again, should start in the NFL. We talk about it. You and I both agree on it. He's a guy who can be, honestly, if you build the team around him, you gave him the tools, you gave him the confidence. I'm not going to say he's going to be a top 5, top 10 guy, but top 20, I think that's possible. Yeah, I think he can be right on that fringe of as a serviceable quarterback. I think he's better than some of the guys we've seen out there that people have given way more time to. Imagine having Gardner Minshew on the New York Jets this year or something like that. There are teams that are in the bottom 10 that would kill to have Gardner Minshew. And the Colts are going to be possibly a playoff team or right outside of it because of Gardner Minshew. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's, been in and out of the lineup. So Zach Moss is a huge contributor. Well, he's been hurt, but I mean, he really helped, you know, shoulder the load while Jonathan Taylor's been injured often and had a lot of different disputes going on with his contract. That being said, Jonathan Taylor was used in this game a lot at the beginning, and then they kind of tapered off. If you're the Colts, I mean, I think that's your pathway to success, man. I mean, people are talking about how valuable Jonathan Taylor is using that way. He has fresh legs. I mean, it wasn't a leg injury he had early in the season, but after that, it's thumb. Like his legs are rested, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
give him the ball and run the ball. That's what your offensive line is good at. I mean, Gardner Minshew will take shots downfield. So I mean, he had the perfect lethal combo for play action right there. But you just got to commit to it and let Jonathan Taylor run it for 120 yards. I mean, there's no reason not to. He's that kind of guy. I mean, we saw it. We've seen what Kyron Williams and the Rams have been able to do. Do the same thing with Jonathan Taylor, and I promise you, it will make a much better team overall. Make the Colts a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs or not. So they got to recommit to that. Obviously the Raiders. I think Coach Pierce should 100% be the head coach next year.
Mm-hmm.
I get the allure of Jim Harbaugh if he comes back from Michigan, how great that can be. And I'm not denying that maybe the only candidate I could see, the switch for. The reality is, outside of him, none of these other guys are going to have a proven track record as an NFL head coach. You talk about guys like Ben Johnson. I mean, Ben Johnson's the offensive coordinator for the Lions, and they've done a lot with Jared Goff. But there's still things that aren't perfect there. There's guys lining up 5 yards from the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 1, trying to do a, I formation with no fullback and try to, get plummeted in the backfield for 3 yards. Like, there's no NFL coordinator right now that I would take over what Pierce has already built. Because, one, you're starting over. And two, I don't know what you're going to get extra that you don't already get in Pierce. You've got Dan Quinn, who's a defensive guy, but so is Pierce. And, I mean, the defense has been really good under Pierce, so I don't think it's really that much of an upgrade considering what you already know. So I would trust the guy I have unless Jim Harbaugh decides he wants to come. I could see that because, there can be development. They can build an offense. I think that could be helpful for them in the long run as well. But outside that, Pierce is my guy. And if it was up to me, I had both guys on the table, I would keep Pierce because, I mean, the players love playing for him. He has a future in this league. And I don't think the Raiders can screw this up twice. You have a track record here. You have a performance that's been very good. You almost got into the playoffs just like another interim head coach almost did 2 years ago. Let's make it official. Give them the title. Let's build something for the Raiders they can be proud of. Let's create a tenacious defense and find the right guys to run that offense.
Yeah, he's 4-4 this year. Raiders are 7-9 overall, so he's doing better than Josh McDaniels, which is not too much of a surprise. But you throw into the fact that the starting quarterback's Aiden O'Connell. No one cared about Aiden O'Connell until he played well in the preseason. He was not a highly touted draft prospect. He's done decently well, but they're winning games with the rookie quarterback that had zero expectations. Their defense has not been that good historically the last couple of years. Antonio Pierce figures out the defense. He figures out to give the players that you have on your team that are X factors the football, and they're doing some pretty good things. So I would hire Antonio Pierce too. I would say save pretty much anyone. I don't even care if it's Jim Harbaugh or anyone else. I think you keep him and keep him running. I do understand they're probably going to have to interview some other people, but Antonio Pierce has gotten more out of this team than I thought they probably would have at the end of the year. And the Colts, we'll see how they do. We'll see if their Week 18 result gets them in the playoffs, and then they have Anthony Richardson coming back next year either way, and probably going to be one of the more hyped teams for the 2024 season next year. The Rams won 26-25 over the Giants. This is a game where Kyron Williams really proved that he was a fantasy god, scoring 3 touchdowns. A very good player for the Rams when he's healthy. So they get the win. The Giants will say, Tyrod Taylor comes back in the lineup and plays pretty well again. Their season's over. Don't have too much to add with that. They're probably going to be looking for another quarterback in this offseason. Brian Daboll's job is probably safe. I mean, he's, just quarterback issues and everything else. And he did well last year. But for the Rams, they lock up the 6th seed in the NFC. I believe even if they lose, they can't go down to the 7th seed. But they definitely cannot have the 5 seed because the Eagles are entrenched there, or the Cowboys if the Cowboys lose and the Eagles win this week. So They don't have too much to play for this week, which is or this upcoming week, which is a very big endorsement for what Sean McVay has done with this roster. See, we talked about it all year. Not the most talented. Matt Stafford came back. It looked like he's not as injured as he was last year. They have tons of guys that are built through this past draft, including Puka Nakua. Kobe Turner is having a good year on the defensive line. It's a team they really built through obviously some free agency and some returning guys, but one draft has a lot of depth adding to this, and they're all rookies and all playing well. So a hell of a job by McVay this year.
Absolutely. I think Sean McVay has really proven once again why he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. This year he doesn't have the elite players that he's had. Sure, there are guys that were there from the Super Bowl team, but last year was rough. Matt Stafford was hurt, and have had no depth since all those trades, which were the right move at the time. It paid off, but this is they've been living through the aftermath of all of those mortgaging the future, and they've been paying up for the last 2 years. But Sean McVay has made things happen with this roster that we could have never expected come this beginning of the season, or even a third of the way in. They looked like they were going to struggle a lot, but they've gotten the best out of this offensive line, and Kyren Williams has been like a revelation for them. We talk about it every week. He's the key to this team. Puka Nakua has been great. Cooper Kupp has always been good. They've got a good offense. Their defense isn't great by any means. The Giants played their hearts out, and I'll give Brian Dable that as well. The team is still trying to compete. Tyrod Taylor, I don't think if you can't get somebody in the draft or you can't build somebody, you're stuck with Danny Dimes either way on your roster. I mean, heck, let Tyrod and him battle it out in camp. If Tyrod's a better one, start Tyrod. I mean, that's simple. I think Tyrod Taylor in the last 2 weeks has impressed. I think it's a guy who doesn't get a fair shake anywhere he's gone because of injuries, and he does get injured a lot. And there's freak things that happen like they did with the Chargers and the punctured lung. But he is athletic. He can throw the ball around, and he's able to push the ball downfield, which is something that a lot of NFL quarterbacks can't do effectively. So I'll give him that. I mean, again, there's probably better options between those two. There's better guys outside, but the reality is if you're hamstrung because of salary, because of Daniel Jones, I don't think Tyrod's the worst thing to have in this roster. But that being said, when it comes to the Rams, I have got a feeling about them, and it's mostly just because they know the 49ers that they can be a team that might be a dark horse in the NFC. I don't, it's their defense worries me, obviously, but their offense has gotten going over the last half of the season. Kyren Williams has really entrenched himself as a huge cog in that offensive machine, and I think it can be an interesting matchup if they go to San Francisco. I think they might, of anyone, have one of the better shots to beat them, just as much as anybody else does. And I think they have such an understanding, McVay and Kyle Shanahan do, that they might have the edge over some of the other teams that will play them. Now, are they the most talented team? No, but they know them. And that's something that could come up huge in this season. That's why I put a small wager down because the odds are so great on maybe a Rams potential playoff run. Not picking Super Bowl champion, but we'll see how things work out. Because if they have to march into San Francisco, I'm not going to bet some crazy 14-point spread or anything like that. I think it'll be closer than people think.
Yeah, a lot of points you made, Cease, I agree with. I think the Rams could be a dark horse in the NFC because if you're not taking the Cowboys or the 49ers at this point, I don't know who you're taking, and we're going to get into that here in a second, but just a lot of other teams who have fallen off the map. So that's definitely a good point. And we will definitely have McVay as the biggest offensive guru if he ends up winning that game against the 49ers in the playoffs, and we'll have that documented. He'll have the Dirt and the Dawn official award as the best offensive guru. We'll give him a certificate and everything. And for the Giants, I'm with you, Cease. Tyrod Taylor, Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield. Much rather have those guys at $4 million a year than some of the contracts we're seeing. Like, imagine if the Giants would have said, "All right, Tyrod, you're our guy," and saved that money and spent it elsewhere. That could have been a way better team. Or any number of guys that they want to move. I know there's limited spots in the NFL to be a starting quarterback, but that's just something to think about this offseason with a lot of these GMs. Is just your team can be a lot better. And Tyrod Taylor actually in the past was a very good starting quarterback for the Bills, but then they took Josh Allen, and you're not going to not start Josh Allen, so it wasn't a bad decision by the Bills, but I don't know. You could tell me another team couldn't have used him, couldn't have had him as a starter and not taken a rookie quarterback. Obviously, the thing with the Chargers and Herbert replaces him after the punctured lung and everything. But yeah, I think there needs to be the reset of the quarterback market because if you're not one of those playmakers we talked about, elite players like Joe Burrow, like Patrick Mahomes, like Josh Allen when he's playing well, even like Dak Prescott, even down to that level, Lamar, then you're probably not worth more than $35 million a year. I know that's how the market is trending, where everyone gets over $35 million, but you just aren't. So that's what I want to see this offseason if I'm a GM. I don't want to see any of these other average quarterbacks get these big deals, but it probably will happen. That's just how it works. Next game up, Cease, we mentioned that maybe the Rams are an NFC dark horse this playoffs, but a lot of that is because the Eagles have fallen on their faces. The Cardinals win 35-31. Eagles are now 11-5. They in pretty much the last month. Remember, they were 10-1 at one point. Now they're 11-5. Defense is totally falling apart. Their offense is turning the ball over too much. It seems like there might be some locker room issues. The rumors are that it's AJ Brown and stuff going on there, but which is not too surprising given how much he's been caught on camera complaining about getting the ball on the sidelines. Quickly with the Cardinals, Kyler Murray has been cemented as their franchise quarterback. Jonathan Gannon said it in a press conference this week, but also they're winning enough games that they're not going to have a top 2 pick in the draft and not going to have a top 3 pick, I think, anymore either with the Patriots. We'll see how this last week shakes out, but that means he's probably going to be the starting quarterback. That allows you to build the franchise a little bit, especially because he's already locked up on a deal. But mostly because the Cardinal season is pretty much over. The Eagles, I don't even know if they can count as frauds. They're just a bad football team over the last month and a half or so.
Yeah, frauds are people who barely get wins and don't look good doing it, and people are saying they're good because of record. Like we've seen teams that are have 11, 12 wins going in the playoffs that didn't really play anybody, and in a couple games against bad opponents, they looked bad. Eagles are just dropping games, like just loss after loss. You can't be a fraud if you literally lose. Like you said, they've lost. They got 1-5 in the last month or so, a little month, about the last 6 games. That's horrible. I mean, there's no sugarcoating that. I mean, sure they played some hard teams, but those are the teams that are all in the playoffs. I mean, if you can't beat any of them, and it's not even just like, oh, they were all close games. It's like, no, you got destroyed by the 49ers. You got destroyed by the Cowboys. Now lost to the Cardinals, who looked left for dead halfway through the season. So, yeah, I mean, gosh, you're going to be probably the 5 seed against an NFC South team, like probably the Buccaneers. We'll see. But the reality is that game a month ago would have gone, well, the Eagles/Cowboys over the 5 seed is going to trounce the NFC South opponent. But now if it's the Eagles versus the Buccaneers, I don't know. Like, it's just one of those things where you go, maybe Baker Mayfield goes off because the Eagles secondary is so terrible, and the Eagles offense just struggles like they have and turn over the ball again. So, yeah, I mean, they got a lot to prove against the Giants this week. If I'm them, I'm going out there and trying to score 100 points. I'm going to try to figure out anything I can to make this team look better going into next week because I don't really feel like going in and just having a close game with the Giants, who we have no business being close to after almost, we're talking about the Giants, Cardinals, Giants here. And the Eagles have not had a good performance in any of those games. So, or in those first 2. If they come away against this one again with a poor performance, I don't think I can pick them in their matchup with the NFC South champion right now. So it's disappointing. Cardinals, it's been great. I mean, they've gotten 4 wins, which a lot of people didn't think was possible. So hats off to them. Let's see if they can cap off the season, in a feel-good moment from winning potentially 5 games this year. That would be quite the tale. And again, you get somebody like Marvin Harrison Jr. or a top receiver in the draft, or just something to really help Kyler Murray. Maybe we see a turnaround on this team quicker than we thought.
Yeah, we're going to pick the game later, Cease, but Tyrod Taylor might just end up screwing around and beating the Eagles in the last game of the season. And it might not matter because they're the 5 seed, and the Cowboys, if they simply beat the Commanders, it does. But you still want to see their offense get back on track, and honestly their defense too. It's both have been pretty bad. So we're also talking, I don't know how serious it is, but went from Nick Sirianni taking the team to the Super Bowl, being the toast of the town, to literally in the last month starting to have the rumors of like maybe he's going to be fired because he doesn't have things together. And that's just crazy to think about one year to another. And I don't think it's all smoke. I think a lot of it is smoke that probably won't happen, but that's just crazy. All right, the Saints finally came alive. They win 23-13. They improved to 8-8, which is interesting because they beat the Buccaneers. We were just starting to get a little bit high on the Buccaneers and saying, okay, well, they'll win the NFC South. Well, there's a lot to play for in Week 18 for the NFC South. There's still 3 teams who are able to make the playoffs depending on the results. So the Buccaneers play the Panthers, likely going to win that game, so there's not too much to sweat about. But the Saints just turned it on too little too late, and the Buccaneers, trusted Baker Mayfield, and it paid off even though this game was pretty awful.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield laid up a dud in this one. There's really no way around it. And again, we talked about it with Baker. We like Baker on the show. We like what he can bring, and we like what he can bring for the salary that he commands. But again, there are flaws in Baker Mayfield's game. Neither of us have ever been running around saying Baker Mayfield's a top 5, you know, fringe top 10 guy, honestly. I think should start in this league, but there are flaws, and they were all very apparent in this New Orleans game. He presses the ball downfield sometimes where he shouldn't. He makes bad decision making. His gunslinger mentality can bite him at times against teams that are able to know what it is, know what he likes to throw to, and mask the coverage for him. And he struggled a little bit in this one, and I mean, they lost because of it. The Saints look better. Derek Carr barely threw the ball downfield, so that was something. The Bucks let Taysom Hill beat somebody in coverage, so that was a very regrettable moment. But yeah, the Saints are not a great team. They're a team with a good coach in Dennis Allen. They've had good players. It's just a lot of people picked them to win the NFC South possibly this year, and I think they're right on the cusp of it. They really can. If the Bucks blow this game, which we'll get to. They could make it the playoffs, win the NFC South. It's just a little too late in my eyes. And my question is, when are they going to have a really complete game? Because again, this game they won, but the reality is the defense came and took advantage of Baker Mayfield. But Derek Carr didn't really do that much in this game.
No, he did not. Not the greatest year for Derek Carr, not the greatest year for the Saints. And yeah, the Buccaneers probably going to go to the playoffs, and that just makes us feel a little bit smarter because we would talk about Baker Mayfield and his talents and what he can do, and his limitations don't bother me as much at $4 million a year. So good for them. We'll pick those games later just to confirm that. But let's move on, Cease. The 49ers beat the Commanders 27-10. Nothing surprising here. The 49ers lock up the number 1 seed. I'm neither concerned about the 49ers. The Commanders, we knew Ron Rivera is going to get fired at the end of the year because of ownership change and because they're just not very good. But I don't have too much more to add on this one. We expected it. It is what it is.
Yeah, the result was exactly what we thought. They covered the spread. It was a little closer at times than you'd expect. But, Christian McCaffrey let some fantasy owners down. That is a key takeaway here if you want to talk the fantasy angle. No touchdowns in this one. Kind of got hurt. Jordan Mason before that. Jordan Mason got his touchdown. That was a rough thing if you were betting on Christian McCaffrey out there. So, yeah, that's the only other extra thing to add is all those guys that thought they were going to be in a fantasy championship and wrap it up with Christian McCaffrey did not get what they expected.
No, they did not, and he is going to sit out next week because if anyone does have Week 18 championships, I know we do. We have 2-week championships in one of our leagues, or 2 of our leagues actually. Just because NFL is stupid and has bye weeks going through week 14, and it just makes it tough. But they have number 1 seed locked up. They have no reason to play. So Sam Darnold and Elijah Mitchell will be leading the 49ers in their last game of the season. The next game ceased. The Jaguars beat the Panthers 26-0. CJ Beathard looks okay. ETN really carries the team. 102 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. They get the win, stay in contention to win the AFC South. It's going to be a barn burner at the AFC South games this weekend that we'll be watching. But the Panthers don't have the number 1 overall pick. They sent to the Bears. And their owner, who just took over the team a couple of years ago, is quickly becoming the worst owner in sports. And I think he's aided by the fact that Dan Snyder sold the Commanders. Don't get me wrong. But he threw a drink on a Jaguars fan while he was sitting in a box in Jacksonville over, I'm assuming, something he said. It's crazy. I never thought we'd see the day. He's been fined $300,000 by the NFL. that amounts to nothing in terms of fines, because of how much money he's worth and how much he makes. But we're seeing a day where owners are throwing drinks on people in broad daylight with cameras flashing. It's great. I mean, I don't know. It's just it's Panthers fans. I feel bad for you. It's going to be a long time before your team is good if that's what ownership group is doing. On top of the fact that, see, we've talked about all year, he overruled the coaching staff and wanted Bryce Young. He fired a coach after one season and then did it again. Like it's not a good job. It's not a good time. It's gonna be a tough sledding for Carolina fans for a long time.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's just not letting. I mean, for a guy who's made billions of dollars, runs, you have to run large companies in order to do that. You have to be a very successful businessman. And part of being a very successful businessman is being able to delegate and trust the people under you most of the time. Any CEO will tell you that. If you don't have people around you you trust and you can't give some of your responsibilities to them, you're not going to be a very good leader and you're not going to be able to lead a very successful organization. And that's exactly what he can't do. He can't trust the people around him. These people who their entire life and career has been watching NFL tape, grading prospects, watching college games, knowing, what can be successful and not, and just overruling them and the coaching staff and just going, I have a gut feeling because I watch NFL on Sundays at 1 o'clock that I know better than them. And that's stupid. Like you're a very successful person. Like obviously you have enough money to buy an NFL franchise for $1 billion. Like that no one's saying that you're not a successful, smart person. The reality is this isn't your field, and you should have the ability and the temperance to understand that and put the people in the right position that you believe do know better than you and you can trust to make the right decisions. He's shown he can't do any of that. And now throwing in the drink on a fan is just the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I mean, the idea that he's letting a Jacksonville Jaguars fan get to him, like this is Jacksonville, Florida, guys. Like it's the panhandle. Like, come on. Like, you can't obviously tell me that you're that upset at this idiot talking trash to you that you as a $1 billion person throw a drink at him like a like a 5-year-old. Like it's hilarious actually. It's like you can't take take the high road, bro. Like why are you even chawing with this guy in the first place? And you have too big an ego or too big a temper, or that you've messed up so bad if you're gonna let this guy get to you so quickly. So yeah, it's a different level. I mean, what's the NFL gonna do? Fine, yeah. I mean, he just made an embarrassment of himself, and honestly, I think it's kind of hilarious if you're that Jacksonville Jaguar fan. You just go, yeah, I pissed off the owner of the Carolina Panthers so bad he threw a drink at me. That's a legendary story, So the Panthers suck. The Jaguars, I mean, they beat the worst team in the NFL. All the little townspeople will cheer and go, yay. But the reality is, I mean, it comes down to this week, and it comes down to what team's going to show up in the NFL playoffs. I don't know. They drop this game, they're not even going to win the AFC South, which that's a big letdown if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, considering where you were. Trevor Lawrence didn't play. I assume he'll play this week. We'll get to that preview. But, yeah, it's just, again, another team that had high playoff expectations, and it's just completely fallen off in the second half of the season.
See, if I'm that Jaguars fan, I think a piece of ice got in my eye, or I fell because of the spilled drink, or I'm jumping into the box and throwing hands. But that's neither here nor there, I guess. I don't know. Just weird behavior, and they vet these people and make sure they don't get owners who are gonna do stuff like this, and then finds out that like not only is this guy bad at running an NFL team, which is bad for the league, but also he's doing this stuff. Yeah, it's not great. So, and also the fine of $300,000 with everything he makes and is worth, when you're finding practice squad guys for a lot of money for preseason hits sometimes. Oof, I don't know about that one. All right, so the next one up, we have Lamar Jackson maybe sealing the MVP race already. He wins with the Ravens 56-19, 321 yards passing, and 5 touchdowns. Now, they lock up the number 1 seed, so he's sitting in week 18, but I think his number's still good enough to do justice that he's going to win the MVP. Dak Prescott's probably a second, but it's not really a close second at this point. Dolphins lose this game, not going to beat the allegations that they're frauds, even though they did play the Cowboys well the week before, But more importantly now, in this game, Xavier Howard goes down early, and then late in the game, they're down by 30, and Bradley Chubb's still in the game, and he tears his ACL. No reason for Bradley Chubb to be in the game at that rate. Should have pulled him. It's something that's going to hurt them in the playoffs now. Bradley Chubb has had a couple of different injuries over his career, and that really is unfortunate for him. But Dolphins went from a team a couple weeks ago that we thought, hey, maybe they could make a run. They just need to prove they can beat someone good, and then they played the Cowboys tough. And we're thinking, okay, maybe they'll get something going here, and then this happens, and it's kind of like with all the injuries they already have, especially on the offensive line. I don't know. I think it's going to be it might be a rough couple of weeks here, and even if they win against the Bills, what's the next step here when you go to the playoffs? It's going to be another tough game. So
Yeah, I mean, this was an absolute nightmare game, nightmare scenario for the Dolphins. They got thrashed by the Ravens. That's all you can really call it. Tua was making bad decisions with the ball in this one. A lot of turnovers. That those two interceptions were bad. Like they were not good decision making. He was just not seeing the coverage right, and guys just straight up slid up and took advantage of it. Um, I'm on the same page. Bradley Chubb should not have been in that game. Tua was already out of the game. Like you were down by 40 points. Like just it's over. I get the pride that your defensive guys want to, go out there and continue to try to contribute, but you got to go up to them as a coach and just go, hey man, your day's done. Like I get you're a competitor, but the reality is you're not competing for anything. Like their backups are going in. Like this isn't healthy for you to be out there. Like conserve your body, conserve the hits, because we got a big game that we got to win now next week, and that's where your focus should be at. Your focus shouldn't be at, oh, I'm mad that these guys are beating us so bad. I'm going to go out there and make some plays and try to get somebody. It's like no, you're done, man. Like you're too valuable to this team to be risking stuff like this, and this is what happened. It's hindsight. A lot of guys, especially defensive guys, will play in games till the end. Like they don't like to sit, they don't like to rest, they don't like that. And I get it, but bad move. It was a nightmare scenario. Tua got a little hurt on his last snap with the slide down. It just really was, if you're a Dolphins fan, just an absolute like punch in the face. Not only you get destroyed by the Ravens, you're honestly two of your top five guys in your roster are hurt in this one in garbage time, in meaningless moments. So yeah, if you're the Dolphins right now, I mean, you're hitting the panic button and you're just praying this week because I don't know what you do. I mean, you got to try to beat the Bills. You can't just sit there and sit your starters and just hope for the best because the reality is you don't look like you're playing your best football. And if this is the product that you show come the wild card round, you're going to be toast. And two, like you don't want to lose potential home field advantage through most of the playoffs until the championship game. And if somebody beats the Ravens, you could be in the championship at home in Miami. So a lot of things, a lot going on. It's a rough day. If you're the Ravens, though, you got to be feeling great. You just blew out two of the better teams in the NFL. 49ers, a lot of people say are the best team in the NFL, and you blew them out. So, I mean, they're the favorite going in the Super Bowl. I think they should be. I think they're playing their best football right now. We'll see what they're going to do with resting starters and things like that, and how the bye will affect them. But I don't think they're unbeatable by any means. I think it's just they've gotten up on teams quickly in the last two games, and they haven't really let up. Um, I think that can change quickly in the playoffs. I don't know. They keep getting off these hot starts, sure, and I think they could come up against a team that just doesn't make the mistake first, and they have to play from behind, and that's where issues can arise really quickly. This Ravens team is beatable. Believe me, it's just they've looked really good the last 2 weeks because turnovers. I mean, they generated turnovers when the other team was starting to get a little momentum. They changed the game over and over, and they, more importantly, capitalized and scored touchdowns on all of those drives. And that's what's really creating this huge deficit.
yeah, definitely. I'm kind of concerned, like you are. 2 weeks off for some of their important players. It's hard to come back from that and just to go right into the thick of things. I'm not sure. I'm a believer that you play your starters in the games and maybe you pull them at least just to get them some reps. But even then, they're going to be off next week because of the bye. So that's just my philosophy. It probably would have some bad results coming that way, or also some good results in other times. You just never know. But the Ravens do look like one of the favorites to make the Super Bowl. Cease, the Texans beat the Titans 26-3. Will Levis started this game for the Titans, gets bounced out with another injury. Ryan Tannehill steps in. But really, C.J. Stroud returns for the Texans, and that's the difference here. They win 26-3. They stay alive in the playoff race. That's all it really took.
Yeah, I mean, it was really it. I mean, the Texans took care of business. Another team that we were higher on, a couple weeks ago before C.J. Stroud got hurt. And they're rounding into form. It sucks. Some of the injuries they've had, especially at wide receiver. Um, but the reality is, this can be a good team at times. And if C.J. Stroud plays well, I mean, how many times have we seen an NFL team just take off in the playoffs because their quarterback's playing out of his mind? CJ Stroud has that potential. We'll see if they make it in. One, that's going to be a huge factor with this week's upcoming matchup. But I saw a lot. I saw the defense playing extremely well. I saw, Devin Singletary's been playing really well at running back for them. And I like what they've been getting out of the other receivers that are still up and able. So, again, another team I'm not going to pick as my favorite for anything, but a team that, it's not a horrible potential dark horse bet for somebody because the odds are out there for you if you're into the gambling sphere. Put a couple dollars down on it and see if something crazy can happen because we've seen a lot of wild card teams make it to the Super Bowl recently. In recent years, a lot of times they have the advantage because they're playing with house money, I should say, right? Mm-hmm. They're not supposed to win any of these games. They don't have the expectations on them. They're out there just trying to play their game. And I mean, I'm not going to say I'm picking the Texans and Rams or something crazy like that. But I'm saying I think those teams have potential, and I think they can really, make something happen in these playoffs that people may not be quite expecting, especially with how some of the teams in the upper seeds have been playing down the stretch.
Yeah, a lot of the playoffs is coaching, and DeMeco Ryans has, I think, proven already that he's done a fantastic job and could be a good coach. And you mentioned the Rams as well. Sean McVay, another good coach who's won a Super Bowl. It could come down to good coaches beating coaches who aren't as good. So it's something to keep in mind as we move forward. Let's move on to the 4 p.m. Eastern time window games. Started off with the Chiefs beating the Bengals 25-17. Bengals had the lead 17-13 at halftime. They failed to score a point the rest of the game. A lot of issues with their offensive line stepped up. Jake Browning kept on getting sacked. There were times where he wouldn't throw the ball away. T. Higgins left the game with a hamstring injury, ended up coming back in and battled tough with his teammates to try to get a win. Bengals have been eliminated from playoff contention. Now, there was some controversy in this game, too. Jake Browning had an intentional grounding call go against him. Shouldn't have been called and maybe affected things. But at the end of the day, just the Bengals did not have the season they would have hoped. A lot of it had to do with injury. Not just Joe Burrow, but DJ Reader. And that's very important for their defense. And the Chiefs, get the win here. Still not very satisfied with how they're playing as a team. Don't know if I'm going to pick them to win the Super Bowl, but I get why people still might be like, oh, Patrick Mahomes, they'll figure it out. I mean, that's what I've been thinking all year, and they just haven't done it.
I mean, shit, they barely figured it out in this game. It wasn't for Rashee Rice. Like, they wouldn't have. Travis Kelce didn't do anything for most of the game. Marquez Valdez-Scantling continued his drops. Pacheco looks great. Thank God they have Isaiah Pacheco in their backfield. I think that's something they've been missing, when he got hurt. I think that's really the one thing that's keeping this offense alive is him and Rashee Rice, man. Like, it's rough to watch at times. I mean, the Bengals were giving up chunks on the ground. I mean, Pacheco, they might as well have just kept running, but the Bengals employ the same technique against the Chiefs year after year. They just try to conserve time, and they just keep trying to, just run the ball down the field and get timely first down and create sustainable drives. It's hard to do in the NFL, right? Everyone talks about, big plays. You want the big plays. The reality is when you're going against an explosive team, you want to be a team that can turn out a clock. This is what the Ravens have done for years very effectively. So the Bengals have employed against the Chiefs every year and almost worked again. But the reality is the Chiefs are a better team, even with their offense being a shell of what it should be. Their defense can play well at times. I mean, Jake Browning and this offense, they just aren't good enough. It's a reality. I think it's hilarious that the Chiefs' defense is letting Jamar Chase get in their heads that horribly bad in a season where the Bengals really have no chance of doing anything. Like, you're a team that's on the rocks when you're just getting upset about the stupidest stuff. You're frustrated because you're almost losing to a Bengals team that has no chance if this was a year ago with the team the Chiefs used to have. So I'm the same way. I can't pick them in a matchup right now. I don't know what it's going to look like. And people just saying Pat Mahomes is going to figure it out is not good enough, because it's like I've been waiting for Pat Mahomes to quote unquote figure it out for weeks now, and it's not getting figured out. The reality is receivers are untalented. Rasheed Rice is the only guy. They cover him. It's whatever. And Kelsey is a great tight end. He's a Hall of Fame guy, but the reality is he looks worn down right now. And if he's wearing down on top of everything, that's spelling doom to me for this NFL team. So I can't pick them. Again, can it happen? Sure. A lot of things can happen in this playoffs. We've been talking about it all year. There are no really guarantees of much of anything, because the reality is we've got a bunch of teams underperforming and teams that have shown up out of the blue that, who knows, they just turn it up to an extra gear. It's going to be all about who can find the extra gear in the playoffs. It's a different game. The margin for error is super low, and the Chiefs have been playing with a huge margin of error all year, and that's going to dissipate really quickly.
Yeah, I don't have much faith in this team heading into it. I could see them figuring it out. I'm not going to be putting any money behind it. I'm not going to be putting any picks behind it. They might win a game in the playoffs, but after that, anything could happen. So would have liked to see them figure it out for just so we can understand it more than anything at this point, but they just haven't this year, and I don't know what's going to happen next for them. Let's move on to the Steelers and Seahawks game. The Steelers win 30-23. Now, we thought the Steelers, maybe the season wasn't going the way they would have thought, but Mike Tomlin now has another non-losing season. We didn't know Mason Rudolph was the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. They put him in, and this offense starts lighting it up after they've been terrible all year. Najee Harris is stiff-arming dudes into the earth. He had 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. George Pickens is no longer pouting. He had 7 catches for 131 yards. Mason Rudolph is helping them push the ball downfield, which is opening up everything else for this offense. So it really has been a godsend for them. They get the win, which means if they win and either Buffalo or Jacksonville loses, they are in the playoffs in Week 18. Not something we thought we'd be talking about. And the Seahawks' loss here really hurts them because they need to win and they need Green Bay to lose in Week 18 to make the playoffs. That's not something we thought for the Seahawks a couple weeks ago either.
Yeah, the Seahawks really messed it up in this one, to be honest. So, yeah, the Steelers look great with Mason Rudolph back there. The defense is much more, agile because they're not having to be on the field all the time. Like you said, Najee Harris looks like a different running back. This is really a fail on the Pittsburgh coaching staff to really just not think Mason Rudolph might have more in the tank. Because, again, he was the third-string quarterback going into this. So why was he the third stringer? I could get you invested draft capital in Kenny Pickett. That's fine. But the reality is, why wasn't he the number 2 guy? Like, what is going on out there? So questions abound. We'll not know. But man can throw the football downfield. Again, how sustainable is it? Don't know. I think it could change a little bit. Seahawks have a very questionable run defense. They've been one of the worst in the NFL. So I'm not going to say the Steelers' offense is suddenly great. I think they beat up on a not very good defense, and Mason Rudolph is able to hit some shots downfield. Again, that probably won't continue in the playoffs against some of the higher seeds and better defenses. But, yeah, I mean, Mike Tomlin, again, has proved everyone wrong, and I want to see where all the Steelers greats are that were saying that they've lost their way as, the Steelers, mentality is gone. So I want to see where all those guys were that were in the media 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, we need to find the people who were saying that Mike Tomlin should be fired and just, I don't know, try to, push them upwards in the Steelers organization and, hey, maybe he should be fired. Because I think it is tough being in the AFC North as Bengals fans like we are. And you had to play John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin, who are, top 5 NFL head coaches, and just continue to get the job done. Even if they don't have all the parts, the last couple of years, the Steelers, I would argue, should have had a losing season with the roster they put on the field, but they just didn't. They had TJ Watt missing time and everything. So a lot of respect to Mike Tomlin. John Harbaugh is good as well. I'm interested to see what happens in the playoffs if they do make it, if Mason Rudolph can keep this up. But really, it does go to show, Mason Rudolph at his worst was never as bad. At least maybe it's just, I'm not remembering things right, Cease, but was he ever as bad as Kenny Pickett at his worst, or even Mitch Trubisky at his worst? None of them have been great, but I don't think the valleys have been as low with Mason Rudolph. So I'm with you. I don't know why he wasn't the second stringer either. It made no sense. All right, last game of the 4 p.m. Eastern time window. The Broncos beat the Chargers 16-9. It was Jared Stidham versus Easton Stick. Cease, I got nothing here. These teams are heading home after this year or after this upcoming week. It's over for them, and I'm not going to glean anything from these. This was awful.
Yeah, I mean, both teams don't have their starting quarterbacks. Both are trying to figure out a lot. There's going to be a lot of roster turnaround for the Broncos. There's going to be a lot of coaching changes for the Chargers. So, yeah, there's really nothing to really take away or say about this game.
All right, we'll keep moving then. We had the Packers beating the Vikings 33-10 on Sunday Night Football. This was the last game of the week as the Monday Night Football broadcast was on Saturday night to accommodate the college football playoff, which was entertaining in its own right. Jordan Love had a pretty good game, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, really kind of cementing his spot as like he's going to be the guy next year. It also has the Packers in a spot where they can make the playoffs, and if they win, they do so. So not somewhere where I thought the Packers would be. I think a lot of it is due to a mediocre NFC behind the top 2 or 3 teams. But yeah, I mean, this is making the playoffs with this roster. I think is actually really good. I don't know how LaFleur did it. We criticized him this year. We criticized Joe Barry on defense. And I think a lot of it might have to do with just the division they're in, where the Bears were so bad for a long time. The Vikings don't have Kirk Cousins, and the Lions are susceptible. But hey, they've managed to stay in it somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm just. I think it's everything to do with the weakness of schedule and the people they played. I mean, I like the Packers. I've liked the Packers for a lot of years, so I'm not upset they're making the playoffs. That's great for them, but the reality is, it's just this roster is not good. Like it's not a good looking team. Sure, Jordan Love has played better than expected, but again, I mean, they're playing Jaron Hall and the Vikings. Like what are like these games they've been playing recently are not anything impressive. They're nothing to go, oh my god, they played so well. I'm like, they've been playing the bottom feeders of the NFC for like 5 straight weeks, it feels like. And sure, they're getting wins, they're beating teams they should, but the reality is they're not beating anybody of record. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's like
Yeah.
you're gonna walk in and get thrashed by the Cowboys probably. You're gonna go to Jerry World and just get stomped. Like that's kind of where you're at. You're signing up for the 7th seed at this point in the season, and they're not a better team than the Seahawks. Like Seahawks are a better overall team. It sucks because they lost a matchup against another playoff team, and again, Packers beat a Vikings team that has tried to figure out the quarterback position for the second half of the season without Kirk Cousins. So, yeah, it's I guess good for Matt LaFleur, but the reality is it's not been pretty and it's not been great. And I get wins are important, but the reality is if you put them up against some of the other schedules, some other teams that are on the fringe of the AFC and NFC playoffs have played, I mean, we'd be talking about a team of 5 or 6 wins.
I agree, but we'll see what they can do in Week 18. See, so let's get to our picks for Week 18. Now, I love how they did the schedule this week. We often complain, sees that there's not as many 1 p.m. games, 4 p.m. games, but they have all the playoff implications, all the games going on at the same time for each division. But there's games spread out between. There's 2 Saturday. There's a couple. There's a decent amount at 1 p.m. Sunday, decent amount at 4 p.m. Sunday. We have a lot to watch this week. Let's start off with the Saturday games. The Steelers are going to want to win this game, obviously, as we just talked about. They're playing at the Ravens. The Steelers are favored by 4. They've already said Lamar Jackson's going to be benched for this one. We saw this as Bengals fans last year, though. Playing the Ravens with some of their backups in seats, it's not always the easiest thing. The Steelers favored by 4. Who are you going with?
I'm going with the Steelers to win and cover. I mean, if the starters aren't playing the whole game, I think this game is everything to the Steelers, right? I mean, we got a team that's been playing better. Without Lamar Jackson, I don't think the offense of the Ravens looks anywhere near the same. I think still, yeah, it's not going to be some kind of blowout or anything, but I'm picking the Steelers here. You got to trust a team that has everything to play for is going to be able to beat a divisional rival in this one. So I'm going to get them to win and cover.
I'm going with them too. Offense looks a lot different with Mason Rudolph there. I think without some of their starters in, they'll be able to run the ball a little bit. Should be able to get the win. I could see a regression back to the norm and the Ravens sneaking away with one, but I think they win and cover just based on everything we've seen the last couple of weeks with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. We have on Saturday night the Texans and the Colts. The Texans are favored by 1 on the road, Cease. We don't have any reports on whether the Colts are going to open the windows or the roof. It is cold out, but that would benefit them as they have the good running game with Jonathan Taylor. Also, the Texans have not played a game outside of the 1 p.m. on Sunday time window all season long. That's got to be some sort of record.
Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the scheduling, right? No one expected them to do anything. And I mean, it's one of the things. If I'm Jim Irsay, I'm open the whole stadium up. Let's make it freezing cold in there. Let's make it interesting. Like, and not tell anyone. Just the day of, you tell your team, hey, it's gonna be cold in there. They practice to get ready for it all week, and then the Texans come in there and it's freezing. Like, I think that would be an awesome move for them. I'm a big fan of it. I think that would be awesome. And but the reality is, I like what the Texans are doing. I'm going to pick them to win and cover. Because the reality is, I think they are a team with the better quarterback. As much as I love Gardner Minshew, C.J. Stroud has the potential to be a great quarterback in the NFL, and he's shown it week in and week out. I think their defense is playing really hard for D'Amico Ryans, and I like them in this matchup. I think they're just a talented team that is going to get right at the exact time you want to come playoffs.
I'm going Houston too. I mean, CJ Stroud being back healthy is the main reason. They do have some of the receivers coming back. Obviously, no, not Tank Dell, but Nico Collins played last week. I think this is a solid team. I think they've done a really good job. I could see it going either way, but I'll take the Texans, and I'm with you. Open up the roof, open up the windows, and just let Jonathan Taylor run. Has got to be the game plan for the Colts. All right, we're moving on to Sunday games. We have the Browns at the Bengals. Cecil, thankfully, we did not buy tickets to this game. The Browns are already in the playoffs. The Bengals are out of the playoffs. Because the Browns are in the playoffs, they're resting some of their starters. Already mentioned Jeff Driscoll's going to be starting at quarterback for the Browns. Bengals are favored by 7 right now.
I'll take the Bengals to win and I guess cover. If Miles Garrett isn't in there, I'm not that worried. I don't know if Miles Garrett is going to play or if he does, how much he's going to. If that being said, their offense probably isn't going to do a ton if you're Cleveland. And then two, if the defensive key guys are going to be sitting, I think the Bengals are going to be playing for pride. As much as I don't think it's beneficial for them to win this game, they're going to try to win it anyway and kind of end at a high note. Bengals have really done a good job of almost winning every last one of their you know, last home games of the season. Their closing game they usually end strong, which a lot of times it's because they've been playing for a lot, or they end up playing opponents who are already sitting someone. So I think that trend will continue, and I think they're able to cover the spread.
I think so too. I'm not scared of the Browns' backups for the Bengals. I think some of the guys for the Bengals might sit out too, just the guys who've been nursing some injuries. But I think they win and cover. A reason why I think, Cease, if you're going to gamble Week 18, because it is kind of weird, do it early in the week. You could have had, I think the Bengals were favored by 4 earlier in the week. It's all the way up to 7 just because the Browns announced that. But we knew the Browns likely weren't going to be playing people. Just there was no incentive for it. So just if you're going to gamble, get it Tuesday morning, Monday morning, do it then. We'll move to, or excuse me, we have some other Sunday afternoon games to get to. Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are favored by 3 points right now. So both teams could make the playoffs if the results go their way.
3 points at home. No, the Saints to win and cover. I think they win this game. They have a good home field advantage. I think it's a huge game for both teams, but I like the life that the Saints have been showing recently. And again, I don't trust Atlanta for anything. So give me the Saints to win and cover.
I'm going to go Falcons in the upset. I don't like either team, and I just think my mind's telling me Saints, and it just means like it's going to go backwards because I've tried to believe in the Saints all year, like we talked about. It just hasn't worked. Besides last week, so I'm going to go Falcons in the upset. I think there's going to be a lot of teams who are like vying for the playoffs that lose to some teams that they shouldn't be losing to, and even if the Falcons win, it's probably not going to end up in a result where they make the playoffs. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. This one is having the Jaguars favored by 5 points. Cease.
Yeah, I'm going to go Jaguars to win and cover. They should win this game for all intents and purposes. Um, Again, they're an inconsistent team that I worry about, but if Trevor Lawrence is going to play, I have confidence in them to be able to win and cover.
Yeah, I think they can win and cover too. Titans have not been great this year. You throw in the offensive line not being good on top of the quarterback injuries, and Will Levis looked good at times, but just been banged up the last couple of weeks. It's time for them to have an offseason and just reset and figure some things out. I think having Will Levis there has been nice, but not as much to play for here, and the Jaguars will want it more. So Jaguars win and cover. Next one up, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. Now, this is one where the Lions are favored by 3.5 C's. We have not gotten any reports from, I think, the Vikings on who they're starting. I don't think we've gotten any reports on the Lions players. possibly sitting out. They're trying to win the game because if the Cowboys do lose, they could move up a seed level.
Yeah, I'm going to go Lions to win and cover because I think even if they didn't have that much to play or they didn't have anything to play for, I think right now Dan Campbell wants to go out there after how the last game went down because you don't want that riding in for a week on your team. Like you want that to be in the rearview mirror. So I think that's a big thing for them, and we'll see kind of what happens from there. But I go Lions all the way.
Lions all the way for me. Vikings have better defense this year, but it has been like spurty. And then the offense, obviously not figuring out the quarterback position has been tough. New York Jets at the Patriots. This game won't mean anything. Patriots favored by 2.
Yeah, I mean, this is a weird one. I'll go Patriots at 2 at home. I think it's that time of year where things weather kind of plays a factor, and I think Bill will want that kind of last win to kind of cap off the season, which might be the last one he has for the Patriots.
Yeah, they've been fighting tough. They've been playing better than I would have expected. So I'm going to take the Patriots to win and cover at home. I think the Jets maybe given up more than the Patriots have. So I'll take the Patriots to win and cover at home. Next one up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers. Buccaneers favored by 4.5 on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Buccaneers to win and cover again. They have everything in the world to play for. They're not playing a necessarily great team by any means. I think Baker Mayfield will get back in line here and try to make some stuff happen. So I'm going to go with the Buccaneers to win and cover in this one.
I'm going with them as well. They've been good all season. The Panthers have been bad. Nothing to play for. They're just going to want their season to end, to be honest. And that puts us at both of us having the Buccaneers making the playoffs out of the NFC South. If they would have lost, then the Saints and Falcons winner would have been in the playoffs, but the Buccaneers from both of us. Move on to the Sunday evening games. Again, there's more at this time slot because of so much playoff implications. The Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals is going to be the first one we talk about, and the Seahawks are favored by 2.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I think they're the better team, but I could see the Cardinals kind of coming out of nowhere, just because it's kind of a weird divisional game. I think again the Cardinals want to continue to build momentum. I think they're a kind of more dangerous team than people think. So um, I'm going to go Seahawks to win and cover that small spread, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals put up a fight.
Yeah, Cardinals have been feisty all year, but it just means more to the Seahawks. They'll be able to utilize their playmakers a little bit better, I think, in this one, and they'll win and cover, which is good for their chances, but they need other results to help them out to make the playoffs. See, the other game that they need is they need the Bears to beat the Packers. The Bears are at the Packers. Packers favored by 3 points right now.
I'm going to go with the Bears here. I think the Bears have been playing really well. I think they're going to want to put one on the Packers for the first time in forever. And I just like the way that the Bears have been playing overall, and I think the Packers, again, have been playing a bunch of teams that have just been in disarray, and I think the Bears have solid momentum, and then it'll propel them in the upset.
Yeah, I'm going Bears to win as well. I think I like the way they've played as well. They're using Justin Fields the way it should be played. There's a lot of confidence in the locker room too. Like the defense seems like they're buzzing. The offense, like DJ Moore came out and said to this week, like this is the quarterback. This is the guy I want here. I hope management makes the right decision. Like it seems like they're pretty much they're doing some good vibing, and I think they can get the win over the Packers and kind of ruin their season, which means the Seahawks would make the playoffs over the Packers for both of us. As we move on to the Eagles at the New York Giants, the Eagles favored by 5 on the road. Cease probably not something we expected to hear earlier in the season.
Yeah, I'm going to go the Eagles to win and cover because I think they should get better in this one. Again, the Giants aren't great by any means. I think they put a lot on the field last week, and I think the Eagles are going to be more prepared for Tyrod Taylor in this entire game, and because they just saw it 2 weeks ago. So I think the Eagles are going to win not by a lot, but I think they win by a touchdown.
I'm going to go Eagles to win by a touchdown too. This is a game they have to get right. It's one of the games where usually like, oh, they're playing a bad team, they got to get right. This they have to get right before the playoffs. So a lot of emphasis on doing things the right way this week. Maybe some trick plays to get the offense flowing, just to kind of get out of the stagnation. I think Eagles win and cover. Next one up, we have the Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. We might be seeing a lot of backups in this one, Cease. We know the 49ers are benching a lot of their starters. The Rams might not have too much incentive as well because they either the 6th or the 7th seed. 49ers favored by 3.5 right now.
Yeah, this is a weird one. I'd stay away because it's going to be backups. You don't know how long people are going to be playing. Um, I'll go. I'm going to go Rams in this one. I just think it's. I think they're going to play more people probably because they don't have the bye. Or I just it's a weird no bet for me, but I'll go with the Rams and the quote unquote upset.
I'm going to go Rams too. Not one that people will be watching a lot of in this game time window, especially with everything else going on. But I think the Rams might have to, like you said, keep their starters in, maybe prove they can beat the 49ers, even if it's not all the 49ers there. I think it'll be a good win for them. Next one up, the Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders. Both these teams will not be in playoff contention, but the Raiders are favored by 3.
Yeah, giving the Raiders to win and cover. I think they've been playing really well. I think their team again. They want to play for Coach Pierce and show that he should be the guy. So I think they're all going to have motivation to go out there. I think the Broncos again are just kind of going. It's their season's over and they're trying to transition away from Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I have the Raiders too, and not just the Antonio Pierce stuff for helping them win and cover, but the Broncos also might have like a possible mutiny on their hands. A lot of the veterans had been like let go earlier in the season, and it wasn't like handled the best way. Now Russell Wilson and I think all the players on the team have to be wondering like, am I next? Are they going to try to ask me to waive injury guarantees? Like, I think it might be more than just like just the on the field play here. I think there's a lot of emotional stuff probably going on behind the scenes. All right, Kansas City Chiefs at the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are actually favored in this one by 3.5 points. That is because the Chiefs are benching everyone heading into the playoffs as they already have the 3 seed locked up.
Yeah, I'll go with the Chargers because they'll be playing more people, I guess. But again, this is a weird one. I'll give the Chargers to a winning cover because the Chiefs, without Pat Mahomes, I mean, there's not much going on in that offense. So I'll take the team that's not playing as many backups.
Chargers for me as well. Chiefs are going to want to get right. I mean, a lot of guys will be sitting, so I'll take the Chargers to win the last game. They've, probably won't be an entertaining game as we talk about some of these other games going on, but I guess I'll take the Chargers. All right, the last of the 4 p.m. time window, we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Washington Commanders. Cowboys are currently favored by 13 points, which is kind of a big spread, but Cease, if they win, they get the 2 seed.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys are full go in this one. I think they want to win. I think they want to dominate, and I think they want to show that they celebrate that they're going to get the 2 seed if they win this game. So I don't think they're going to let off at any time. Unless they're up by a ton after halftime, I think most the starters are pretty much going to play most of the game. So give me the Cowboys to win and cover.
Cowboys win and cover for me. I think they're going to be focused, and Commanders kind of look like they've given up over the last several weeks, which can't blame them with everything they've got going on with the coaching change and everything else coming. Sunday Night Football sees the one that has a lot of implications around the league. We have the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. This is an interesting one. Bills are favored by 3 on the road for this one, Cease.
I think that's fair. I'm going to go Bills to win and cover here. I think again the weather isn't going to be a factor for the anybody because it's going to be decently nice with it being Miami. Um, I think the Miami just got a huge blow dealt to them. I think no Bradley Chubb. I think Tua is banged up right now. I don't think Tyreek's 100%. I don't think Jalen Waddle, if he plays, is going to be 100%. It's just a lot of guys are banged up in this one, and I think they're going to play hard and try to win this one. But I just think the Bills have everything to gain because the reality is they're playing for their playoff lives as well. It's not just a home field advantage or seeding thing. I think they're going to try to win. I think they played really well against them early in the season. I think this Miami team's only gotten a little weaker and more banged up in recent weeks. So I'll go Bills to win and cover.
I'm gonna go Dolphins. Dolphins are 7-1 at home this season. The only loss being to the Cowboys, which again we both came away pretty impressed after that game. Bradley Chubb is hurt. They do have some other pass rushers, including Jalen Phillips. The offensive line is banged up, but it can't be as banged up as it was a couple weeks ago at this rate. So I think they'll figure some things out. Jalen Waddle probably will play in this game. If they win this one, I'm just as much as the Dolphins' injuries scare me, the Bills and how they're playing also scare me. So I'll take the home team. If you're going to give me 3 points too, I'll take those as well. I think a good team at home this year should be a fun game, but I guess I'll take the Dolphins. All right, Cease, any final thoughts for the week?
No, I think it's going to be interesting who ends up making the playoffs here. I think we got a heck of a Sunday night matchup to watch, and we're excited for the postseason to begin.
Absolutely. My turn to remind everyone to like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. It helps us out as we move forward with the show. We'll be back next week to recap Week 18 and preview the first round of the playoffs as we go through this NFL postseason. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.